すいません。Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Foreign Correspondents Club of Japan. My name is Karine Nishimura. I'm working in Japan as a French correspondent for Radio France and Libération newspaper. I'm also a member of the PAC committee, who is organizing this press conference as well as the other press conference, and a regular member of the club. This is a very important press conference today, and I would like to thank very much Hideko Hakamata. Everybody says Hakamada, but the real pronunciation is Hakamata. And the lawyer Hideo Ogawa very much for coming especially to talk about one of the most tragic post-war court case in Japan, the so-called Hakamada Jiken. As you know, the Tokyo High Court has recently granted Iwao Hakamada a retrial. The prosecutors have dropped their appeal, which now guarantees that this trial will take place. But the same prosecutors continue to maintain that Iwao, who spent already 48 years in prison, is guilty. This is despite the fact that there are strong doubts regarding the evidences, with the Tokyo High Court ruling that there is a high probability that those evidences were fabricated. That's where we are today, ignoring when the trial will begin, how long it will take. Iwao-san is already 87 years old, and that's why we thought it was important to invite Hideko-san and his lawyer here today to talk about the situation, to try to understand what might happen during this new trial and how they want it to be conducted. Our interpreter today is Joel Chalender, and I will give the floor immediately to Hideko-san for a short introduction. どうぞ。はい、Hidekoさんどうぞ。いいですか。
はい。袴田でございます。57年戦ってやっと再審開始になりました。これも皆様のご支援のおかげでございます。国中はともかく、こうして外国の方にまで応援していただいて、本当にありがとうございました。まだ 裁判は終わってはおりませんが、これからはもう一息でございます。ご支援をありがとうございました。ともかく頑張ってまいります。よろしくお願い申します。
So good morning, everybody. My name is Hideko Hakamata, and I'd like to thank you all very much for your unstinting support over the last 57 years. And finally, I'm delighted to say that a retrial has been granted. And this is really thanks to the ongoing support from everyone, both in Japan and in other countries as well. But we are not finished, and there is a major still obstacle ahead. And so I would like to just reiterate again, thank you to everyone for your ongoing support as we continue our fight.
秀子さん、ありがとうございます。小川先生、もうちょっと詳しい説明をお願いいたします。
静岡の弁護士の小川です。袴田事件の事務局長として、今動いております。
So my name is Ogawa, and I'm from Shizuoka. I'm a lawyer from Shizuoka, and I'm currently heading up the defense team for Iwao Hakamata.
今年の3月13日に東京高裁が再審開始を決めて、再審というのは結局前の裁判をもう一回やり直すというそういう制度になっています、日本では。そしてその再審のやり直しのために今検察官、裁判官、そして弁護人と3者で打ち合わせをしている段階です。
So in terms of the current state of play, on the 13th of March in this year, the High Court acknowledged a retrial. And what this means in reality in Japan is to redo the previous trial, essentially. So currently the prosecutors, the judge and the defense team are currently, the three parties are liaising together.
今回、検察官がやり直しの裁判でもまた有罪を立証するということを発表しました。
And this time the prosecutors have announced that they will be substantiating Hakamata-san's guilt this time in the retrial.
この検察官の主張がもうひどいということを理解していただくために少し証拠の説明をします。
So in order for you all to understand just how awful this statement, this intent by the prosecutors is, let me explain some of the events up until now.
袴田さんが有罪とされたのは5点の衣類があったからです。この5点の衣類というのは事件から1年2ヶ月後に味噌の中から発見された衣類で、それが犯行着衣であって袴田さんのものであるというふうに判断されたということです。
And so basically the guilty verdict for Mr. Hakamata has been based on the idea that there were 5 items of clothing that were recovered from a miso tank 1 year and 2 months after the date of the incident. And it was said by the prosecutors that these 5 items of clothing belonged to Mr. Hakamata.
これが5点の衣類です。
And here on this picture are the 5 items of clothing.
で、再審開始決定では、この5点の衣類が犯行着衣であるということについて、合理的な疑いが生じたという判断です。
Yeah, and the fact that a retrial has been granted this time is really about the recognition that there is some logical fallacy with these 5 items of clothing being owned by Mr. Hakamata.
なぜ疑いが生じたかというと、5点の衣類の血痕の色の問題があったからです。
And the doubt this time, what has been cast into doubt is the coloration of the blood clots on the items of clothing.
この5点の衣類を見ると、血がついている部分は明らかに赤みが残っています。しかし、1年2ヶ月も味噌の中に使っていたら、 こんな状態になるのか、もっと真っ黒になるんじゃないのか、そういう疑問が生じたからです。
And so in terms of the kind of doubt that has been felt this time, if you look at these 5 items of clothing, you can see there are parts where there is still red coloration visible, as if there is blood remaining there. But, you know, if you'd left clothes in a tank of miso for 1 year and 2 months, they would surely be much blacker, wouldn't they?
我々は最新の心理の中で、この黒くなるメカニズムを科学的に説明をすることができました。
And in the lead up to the retrial, we were able to explain this mechanism behind these clothing turning more black over time.
そして実際に血痕をつけた生地に布にですね、布を味噌につけて、味噌の汁がその布に染み込めばすぐに黒くなることも証明しました。
We have also carried out verification experiments, putting the fabric in miso tanks and to see how rapidly the clothing starts to blacken.
それに対して最新の審理の中では、検察官は実際に実験をして1年2ヶ月経てば、1年2ヶ月経ってもですね、まだ赤みが残るはずだというふうに主張しました。
However, when it came to the retrial, the prosecution asserted that they had carried out their own experiment where they had left clothes soaked in miso tank for 14 months and the red coloration remained according to their verification experiment.
これがその検察官が行った実験の結果の1年2ヶ月後の結果の写真です。
And here is the photo of the result of the prosecution's experiment, putting clothes into miso tank for 1 year and 2 months.
実際に検察官の実験でも真っ黒になっています。で、これは裁判官も直接実験の現場に来て見たものです。
And in their experiment as well, the clothing had the same black discoloration. And in fact, the judge even went to the site of the experiment to ascertain with her own eyes.
ですから我々はもう検察官はもう再審になって有罪の立証をするということは全く考えていませんでした。
So, you know, we have come to believe that the prosecutors do not believe in a guilty verdict or that they are able to really substantiate guilt when it comes to a retrial.
それが有罪の立証をするというふうに7月10日に、明らかにしました。その有罪の立証の方法について検察官は何て言ってるかというと、5点の衣類には一つは血がついている。だから犯行着衣だ。それから5点の衣類はいろんなところに傷がある。損傷がある。だから犯行着衣だ。そういうふうに言っているだけです。
And really, on the 10th of July, when the prosecutors announced that they would be substantiating proof of guilt in this case, their point of view, their argument was the 5 items of clothing have blood on them, so they must be the criminal's clothing. The 5 items of clothing have lots of damage on them, so they must be the criminal's clothing. This is their assertion.
我々はそれに対して7月14日ですけれども抗議をしました。有罪を犯行着衣であると1年2ヶ月間味噌に使っていたことを証明する証拠も何もないじゃないかと。それなのにどうして有罪に立証すると主張するのかおかしいじゃないかということで、それはもう撤回しろというふうに主張しました。
And on the 14th of July, we made an official protest against this assertion, demanding that the prosecutors would withdraw their assertion to substantiate guilt, because do they have proof of these 5 items of clothing still being having red coloration on after 14 months? How can they make this assertion without any proof?
そしてもう一つは、この色の問題は、再審請求の時に散々議論をして、お互いに立証を尽くした問題だから、また蒸し返しになるじゃないかと、この再審の後半でですね、そういう意味でも、これは許されるべきではないということを主張しました。
And regarding this issue of the decoloration, the black and the red coloration, this has already been debated and kind of substantiated at length during the legal process up until now. So we really feel this is simply a rehash of the previous assertions, and we strongly advocate that they withdraw this rehash.
検察官はそれは意見の違いだというふうに反論しました。
And the prosecutors sought to counter-argue with us by saying it's a difference of opinion.
しかし、この再審の経過の中で皆さんご存知のように、最高裁判所は、前の再審を取り消した決定をまた取り消して高裁に差し戻したわけですけれども、その最高裁は決定の中で、この5点の異例が長期間味噌漬けにされたということについては証拠がないんだというふうに言っています。
Yeah, and however, when it comes to the retrial, the High Court had previously cancelled, a retrial. It was then sent back to the High Court from the Tokyo High Court. But the key point is the highest court has already said that there is no proof that this clothing was soaked in a miso tank for an extended period of time.
ですから我々は最終的に再審の公判が始まったときに、また検察官同じ主張を新たに有罪の立証をするというふうに言うと思いますけれども、それについては法律上こういう証拠に基づかない主張は許されないんだということで却下を求めていくというふうに考えています。
Yeah, and so when it comes to the public trial, the upcoming public trial for this retrial, we think that we're pretty sure that the prosecutors will make the same argument again. And given that the High Court has already said that there is no proof of these clothing being soaked in a miso tank, we will formally be asking them to withdraw their case, given that it is not legal to make statements that aren't grounded in fact.
我々は7月10日の時に冒頭陳述の方向を示す、冒頭陳述案というものを提出しました。
So on 10th of July, we have already delivered an initial sort of opinion regarding our point of view.
この中で一つは5点の異類というのは捜査機関が捏造した証拠であるから、これは証拠としては認めない、排除しろということを主張しました。
And we said that the 5 items of clothing had been fabricated by the authorities originally. And therefore, this should be thrown out of court, given that these are fabricated.
もう一つ、今まで再審の中では主張してなかったことなんですけれども、新たな主張として、この事件は警察が最初から袴田さんを犯人ではないということを知りながら、真犯人を逃がすために証拠の捏造などを繰り返して袴田さんを犯人に仕立て上げた、もうこういう本当にひどい事件なんだということを訴えました。
And in the retrial process up until now, we will be making a new assertion that we feel that the authorities from the very outset, from the very beginning, knew that Mr. Hakamata was not the guilty party in this case. Despite knowing that, they wanted to acquit or let the real criminal get away. So they fabricated the evidence and have fitted up Mr. Hakamata, which is, we believe, an absolutely, undescribably terrible case.
これから多分、9月あるいは10月 遅くとも年内にはですね、再審の公判は始まることは間違いありません。
So I think there's very little doubt that this public trial, this retrial, will commence sometime this year, as early as maybe September or October.
で我々としては、我々の方針は、検察官が先ほど言ったように、新たな証拠を出して、また蒸し返しをしようという、そういう試みを断念させることが一つ、そしてそれとともにですね、もう証人尋問とかを行わないで、再審の審理の中で提出した証拠だけでもう無罪であるということを明らかにできると考えていますので、それによって早く袴田さんを無罪の判決を聞かせてあげたいというふうに考えています。
However, it is very much our point of view, our policy. We think that the prosecutors will be looking to offer some new sort of evidence, which will be a rehash of the previous proceedings so far. They will offer some new kind of evidence. And as it's a rehash, we will be rejecting that. And also, we feel that we will be able to prove Mr. Hakamata's innocence without the need to resort to witness cross-examination, and simply by relying on providing evidence that shows his innocence. We want quickly to reach the verdict of not guilty and to quickly exonerate Mr. Hakamata.
小川先生、ありがとうございます。Before opening the question answer session, I would like to give some chronological element, even if everybody is familiar with the story. Let me give some information. This Hakamada jiken began in 66 years. Thank you. 66年. And 2 years later, in 68, he received a death sentence, which has been confirmed in 80. And in 81, a retrial has been asked, but rejected in 2008. And 1 month later, in 2008, a second retrial has been asked by the lawyer. And in 2014, the Shizuoka court decided the retrial. And at this time, Hakamada-san has been freed from jail, and he is living in Hamamate with her sister since this time, so it's near 10 years now. And in 2018, the Tokyo High Court rejected the retrial once again, but the Supreme Court decided in 2020 that the Tokyo High Court has to examine the case again. And the Tokyo High Court decided this year, in March, that the retrial should be granted to Mr. Hakamada. And at this time, the prosecutors decided not to appeal. This is why the retrial is now sure. And we are in this situation. So I will now open the floor to questions. So if you have questions, please raise your hand and come to the microphone here on air and give your name and affiliation, please. Yeah.
Lars Nikolaisen, German Press Agency. Thank you very much. Quick questions. The clothing, the 5 items, who do they belong to? Second question, the blood, if there is blood on the clothing, has it been able to find out whose blood it is? Were there DNA tests to find out whose blood that is? And then last question, you said you will, in the retrial, rely on evidence to show his innocence. What kind of evidence do you plan to present? And you assume that the prosecutors will look to find new evidence. Can you imagine what they might come up with? It's most likely, listening to you, it will be, again, fabricated stuff. I mean, if there is no proof to show his guilt, then what evidence can they possibly have? Thank you.
Sorry, sir, what was your name again, sorry?
Lars Nikolaisen, German Press Agency.
ドイツのプレスエージェンシーのラズ・ニコライズンと申しますけれども、ちょっと何点か質問させてください。まずは1点目がですね、その5点の衣類ですけれども、それはどなたがその5点の衣類の持ち主だと思われているのでしょうか。そして、2点目ですけれども、その血痕ですね、血がついてたんですけれども、それは誰の血だと、DNA 鑑定などはされたのでしょうか。それを確実に明かすために。そして3点目ですけれども、その再審になると、尋問の取り調べではなくてですね、証拠を使って、この無実を晴らすと、おっしゃられているんですけれども、それに対してこの検察官はどのような新しい証拠を持ち出すなのでしょうか。でそれも捏造された証拠になると想定されているのでしょうかという質問をさせてください。
順番に言います。5点の衣類は誰のものかという質問だったですけれども、一見するとこれは袴田さんのものに見えなくもないというですね、そういう怪しい証拠です。でも実際には捏造された、これは警察官の持ち物だというふうに言っていいと思います。はい。
Yes, so regarding the first question, for the 5 items of clothing, if you took one glance at them, you could be forgiven for thinking that they were perhaps belonging to Mr. Hakamata. But this is in fact dubious evidence in the first place. We think that these were fabricated by the police.
それから血液の問題ですけれども、これは第二次再審の東京高裁で DNA テストをしています。そしてその時には失礼、東京高裁ではないですね、静岡地裁でした。はい、で DNA のテストの結果、本田先生はこの5点の衣類についている血は被害者のものでもない、袴田さんのものでもないという、そういう結論を出しています。
Yeah, so regarding your second question, regarding the blood stains on the 5 items of clothing, when it came to the second trial at the Shizuoka District Court, DNA testing was in fact carried out. And Honda Sensei, and an expert called Mr. Honda Sensei has attested that based on the DNA testing, this blood is not the victim's blood, and neither is it Hakamata-san's blood.
ただ、これは東京高裁ではこの DNA テストの結果は否定されました。それは、こんな古いもうDNA が壊れたようなね、血痕からそんなDNA の結果が出る、検出できるわけがないんだというですね、そういう結論でした。
However, when it came to the Tokyo High Court, they rejected this DNA test results, saying that this was very old DNA that would have been compromised, and that it was impossible to ascertain whose blood would come, via DNA from these blood clots.
ただ我々は、この DNA のテストの結果をおかしいというふうに根拠に使われた一つの理由が、日本人にはほとんど見られない血がDNA がですね検出されているというふうに言われてるんですけれども、それは結局我が国ではこの袴田事件が起こった頃は売血、要するに血液のですね売り買いが非常に盛んに行われてた時期なんですね。ですからそういう意味でもういろんな人の血が混じって作られてたものだというふうに、そういう売血を使われたんじゃないかと思ってます。
売血っていうのは売る
ですね。はい。
So another thing that we think casts, a bit of doubt onto something that's very strange about the DNA test results is that it has transpired that the blood detected in the DNA from these blood clots appears, we are told, not to be blood of a Japanese person. And when this incident originally took place, it was actually the case that in Japan, a lot of blood was being retailed, was being sold. So there is a possibility of various different bloods being mixed up. And that's one thing we also feel is very dubious about this evidence.
神保さんどうぞ。もっとあった？
もう一つ最後に 今度、再審公判で検察官がどうするかということなんですけれども、検察官は新しい証拠は犯行着衣、5点の衣類が犯行着衣であることを証明する証拠は一切用意できなかったし、もうしていません。ですから、もうそこは証明できなくて、僕は終わると思ってます。はい。
Yeah, and in terms of your final question regarding what the prosecutors will try and bring this time, I think there is no proof available to ascertain that the 5 items of clothing were Mr. Hakamata's. So I think it's going to stop at that. They won't be able to prove their assertion.
はい、どうぞ。
Thank you. Terry Jimbo, the video news, and I'm going to ask questions in Japanese. じゃあ日本語で質問させていただきます。まずですね、そもそも今回捏造、捜査員による捏造、地裁判決にあったようにですね、捏造が行われていた結果の冤罪だとすれば、これまでに冤罪は数ありますが、明らかに違う次元の冤罪だということになると思うんですね。なので、この再審において、先ほど小川先生はこの捏造のことも主張されていくということになりましたけれども、再審段階で捜査員による捏造であったということがですね、明らかになるというと変ですけれども、確定する、あるいは司法上は確定できる見込みっていうのはどれくらいあるのでしょうかというのが1点、それからもう一つですね、これはぜひ秀子さんにもお伺いしたいんですけれども、本当に40年以上もですね、ずっとこの岩さんのことを支えられてきて、この再審請求をここまでずっと頑張ってこられた、その力のですね、源といいますか、何がそこまでの力を秀子さんに与えられたのかと。それからすいません、もう一点だけ短く、検察がですね、これ明らかにもう全く勝ち目がないことはもう分かりきってるわけですよね。これまでそもそも再審で無罪になったケースというのは一度もないですし、今回ももう唯一の証拠が否定されているわけですから、でもにもかかわらず、この検察が今回ですね、あえて有罪立証なるものをまた試みてくるという、この真意というのは、小川先生はどうご覧になってますか。勝ち目がなくても時間稼ぎなのか、あるいは今上にいる人が自分の任期中にはこの判決を出したくないっていうレベルのことなのか、ちょっと真意を測りかねてるんですが、そこをもしお考えがあったらお願いします。
So hello, just like to ask a few questions. My name is Jimbo Tetsuo from Video News. And we've been using the word fabrication, and in this case it could be a fabrication which led to a miscarriage of justice. And there have been such miscarriages of justice in Japan before, but this one seems to be of a slightly different nature with the retrial element. Now, what do you think, Mr. Ogawa, is the likelihood of this retrial that it transpires that the fabrication was indeed carried out by the authorities in the first place? What do you think is the likelihood of that happening is my first question. My second question is to Hideko-san. And for over 40 years now, you have been fighting very hard for a retrial for your brother. And I would just like to ask you, what is the source of your power? What is the source of your energy and devotion, which is so incredible? And the final question for Mr. Ogawa. This time, the prosecutors pretty much know that they can't win. They know that their evidence will be rejected. There's a fair chance their evidence will be rejected in the retrial, but they are still asserting that they will substantiate proof of guilt. Now, what could be the reason for this? Is it to save time, or is it the case that the chief prosecutor will not allow this, to happen on their watch? What exactly is the driving force behind this? Thank you.
捏造をどのくらい証明できるかみたいなところですけれども、実は5点の衣類以外にもたくさんの捏造の証拠があります。で、少なくともそのいくつかはもう明らかに捏造だということを言えるはずです。常識的に見ればですね。はい。そこは確信してます。で、問題の5点の衣類が捏造だということについては、もう少なくとも今まで再審の中で捏造の可能性が高いというふうに言われています。ただそれ以上ですね、捏造に間違いない、誰が捏造したというようなところまではもう関係者がほとんど全て亡くなっている状況では難しいかなというふうに考えています。とりあえずいいですか。
Yeah, so in terms of the first question, when it comes to the fabrication by the authorities and what is the possibility of actually, having that come to light, well, in fact, other than the 5 items of clothing, there are various other items which point to fabrication by the authorities. And some of them are extremely clear in terms of anyone taking a look at it can see that there has been a clear fabrication. It's somewhat obvious. And so that's the first thing to mention. And then with the 5 items of clothing, in the retrial up until now, that has been admitted, it has been said in the retrial that there is a high likelihood of fabrication. However, a lot of the related parties, in terms of the authorities, are now no longer alive, which does complicate the situation.
秀子さんどうぞ。
私は巌は無実だからと思っております。無実だから頑張りました。
Yeah, I believe my brother Iwao is innocent, and that's why I've carried on fighting.
いいですか。はい。それで、検察が、再度有罪を立証しようというどういう目的、どういう動機なのかというご質問だったと思いますけれども、私が思うには2つですね。1つは有罪はもう無理であっても、せめて捏造だということだけは認めさせたくないという裁判所に、そういう目的があると思います。だから今回の証拠も有罪の立証に使える新証拠ではなくて、捏造を否定するための新証拠しかありません。はい、それが一つ。それからもう一つはちょっと嫌な話ですけれども、やっぱり時間を稼いで、それこそ秀子さんや巌さんがもう倒れて、皆さんがもう本当にこの事件のことをですね、今ほど関心を持たなくなってくれることをもう期待しているんではないかと私は思っています。
So regarding the third question about what you think the prosecutors are going to try and bring to the table this time, why are they trying to substantiate guilt after all this time? Well, I think there are 2 elements to this. The first is, even if they know it's not possible to substantiate a guilty verdict, they will absolutely never admit to fabrication. And so one objective of this new so-called evidence that they will be bringing this time will not to be to prove guilt, but rather to disprove fabrication, because it's very important for them not to admit fabrication. The second, I think, as you allude to, is a time-buying exercise, and rather cynically on the prosecutor side, and disappointingly, they are relying on the fact of Hideko-san and Iwao-san's, senior age, and that soon the public may lose interest in this matter. So I think it's a very cynical ploy.
Yes.
北海道新聞の西村と申します。秀子さんにお伺いしたいんですけれども、死刑という刑罰について聞きたいです。死刑は執行されるともう取り返しのつかない刑罰だと思うんですけれども、もし執行されてればそれはもう大変なことですし、これまでずっと40何年間袴田さん、巌さんのですね人生が、もしこの冤罪がなければ別な人生歩んでこられたんだと思うんですけれども、ずっと続いてきて、もう高齢です。87歳で、人間いつかは死にますし、このまま裁判が終わらないまま亡くなることがもしあれば、巌さんの人生はずっと犯罪者の汚名を着せられたままの人生になる。それで終わってしまう。事実上もう死刑に近いようなものが今執行されているかもしれないという疑問を持つわけです。でこの刑罰のありようについてお考えがあればお伺いしたいのと、あと、これで再審の結果無罪ということになった場合、 巌さんの名誉回復というのはどのような形でできるか、もしお考えがあったら聞かせていただきたいんですが。
死刑囚、まだ今でも死刑囚です。で、拘置所にいる時にね、処刑があったっていうと大変心配しました。でもまさかそんな処刑はされないだろうと思って頑張っておりました。で、巌の将来というか、そういうことはまだ今のところ考えておりませんが、ともかく48年間刑務所の中に入っておりました。巌の苦労というものは並大抵ではないと思います。それを考えますとね、せめて再審法改正なり何なりしていただきたく思います。48年を、巌の48年を無駄にしないように、再審開始法とかそういうものの改正を望んでおります。
So I'll just quickly give you the question. My name is Nishimura from the Hokkaido Shimbun. I know the death penalty can't be reversed once it has been given, but in fact with Iwao-san, he spent 47 years on prison, was issued a reprimand from the death penalty, but you know, he basically has been on death row for most of his life. And if he hadn't, you know, if there hadn't been this miscarriage of justice, he would have had another life up until now. He's 87. One day he will pass away, and if he does, he may die, you know, he may pass away still as a criminal. And so, you know, I just wanted to ask you how you feel about this punishment in the first place. And if his innocence is indeed proved this time, what would you like to see in terms of if the restitution of his name and his reputation was the question from Mr. Nishimura. And Mrs. Hakamata's answer was, I believe he is still on death row and is still facing the death penalty on death row. It's been an enormous source of worry for me constantly, and it's why I've worked so hard to have his name acquitted. I haven't thought so deeply about the future yet in terms of your question. He has been in prison for 48 years. His pain must never be forgotten. And if this retrial, if we can get his name cleared, I want to make sure that these 48 years do not go to waste. And I would like to see it result in something like a revision of the law for retrials, some sort of improvement to the legal framework.
Any other question? Right. どうぞ。
テレジンボ今、再審法の話が出たので、大川先生、今回、ずっと再審のために戦ってこられてきて、日本の再審法が明らかにおかしなところ、つまりこれだけ時間かかっちゃったわけですね、再審を実現するまでに。で今、再審法の改正ということも秀子さんの方から出ました。その日本の再審法が実際に戦ってこられて、明らかに間違っているところ、おかしなところ、変えるべきところ、どこにあるのか、お願いします。
So this is Jimbo Tetsuo from videonews.com again. I'd just like to ask another question regarding the retrial law that was just mentioned. Mrs. Hakamada, you've fought extremely hard for a retrial, and it would appear that Japan's current legislation leaves a lot to be desired. There are several objectionable points. And so I'd just like to ask you, for example, it's extremely time-consuming for a retrial to occur. You mentioned improvements or some sort of, improvement to the legal legislation, but what do you see as being the most objectionable parts of the existing law?
実際にこの袴田事件で、再審を行ってきて、一番もう悔しいというか腹立たしいというか思いをしたのはやっぱり証拠開示の問題ですね。重要な証拠が彼らが持ってたのにもかかわらず隠されてきた、そして出さなかったというところが一番大きいというふうに思います。5点の衣類についてもまさにそういうことが言えて、5点の衣類をこれが捏造証拠だということを明らかにするのにものすごく時間がかかったわけですけれども、それは彼らが嘘ついてたからなんですね。でこれが 実はこれは最初に我々が持っていたカラー写真なんです。これ5点の入りのカラー写真なんです。でこの右上がこれ緑のブリーフというふうに言われてたもので、それがこれはカラー写真でもこんな茶色のカラー写真を我々は渡されていたわけなんですね。でそうするとなんとなく味噌に使っててもおかしくないような色合いかなというふうに思うじゃないですか。ところが証拠開示で出てきた写真はこれなんですね。緑が全然違うじゃないですか。緑ですよね。こちらは茶色ですよね。でこんなカラー写真が最初からあったらこんなね1年2ヶ月も味噌に使っていてこんな色になるはずじゃないじゃないかということをもう最初からもう疑問に思ったはずです。こういうところが一番大きかったと思ってます。
So in this incident, in terms of campaigning for the retrial, I would say that for us on the defence team, the most painful, the most kind of really uncomfortable part has been the authorities not releasing or disclosing items of proof. Okay, so they held on to key items of proof for a long time. The 5 items of clothing, it appears that they, we can now say that it appears to have been fabricated, but it took a long time before we were able to access these very key, items of proof. And so you can see from these photos that I'm holding up here, the one that I showed first of all, this is a colour photo that we received, that the defence team received. And you can see that one of the 5 items of clothing, which was what was called a green pair of briefs, you can see that in our original colour photo, they are brown. Okay, so no wonder, having been soaked in a miso tank for 1 year and 2 months, it's no wonder that they would be brown. And yet, in this other photo of evidence, the briefs are green. So you can just see the completely different colour of the briefs that are supposedly key items of evidence. And I think this, for us, this clear disparity in these colours and the improbability of it, it has been perhaps the hardest point to swallow.
Lasting Lies in German Press Agency again. If it is okay, may I ask how your brother is doing? How he has been spending his life since he was released from prison? If it's okay, can you let us know a little bit how he's feeling, what he's talking about? Is he talking a lot about life in prison? How does he think about the Japanese society, not only the legal system, but the Japanese society? Can you elaborate or tell us, share with us a little bit about his feelings? Does he has wishes for the future? He has reached now 87 years of age, but does he have some wishes? Does he feel more anger or also gratefulness towards you and all the supporters who have supported him and believed in his innocence? What does weigh most for him? Stuff like that, if I may ask. Thank you.
ドイツプレスエージェンシーのものですけれども、こういうことを聞いていいかどうかですね、ということなんですけれども、もし差し支えなければですね、今、岩尾さんの健康ですね、あと心理状態について伺いできればと思っているんですけれども、一旦保釈されて以外にどのような生活を送っているのでしょうか。そして今、岩尾さんは何を話すことが多いんでしょうか。彼は感じているのは怒りですか、それとも支援者に対する、ありがとうという気持ちは強いのなのでしょうか。そして日本に対して日本の司法制度に怒りを持っていらっしゃるなのか、それともどういう心理状態なのかについて、ぜひもし差し支えなければ聞かせてください。
岩尾は現在まだ妄想の世界におります。それで裁判はもう終わったって言ってるんです。だから裁判のことは一切話はしておりません。
So, in fact, my brother Iwao at the moment is in, I would say he's sort of slightly delusional in that he says and states that the trial has finished. And so we don't really talk about the trial because he says the trial is over?
この頃は朝早く起きたり午前中寝てたりいろいろなんです。それで見守りたいというものがあってこの頃は歩かなくなりましてね、年でしょうかね、やっぱりちょっと老いたなと思いますが車でねドライブに行っております。
So yeah, he has different days. Sometimes he gets up very early and then sometimes goes back to sleep. He's kind of up and down. I suppose as he's getting older, he can't really walk very well at the moment, but we do like to go for a drive in the car.
浜名湖の辺とか地元の岩尾が育った岩水寺というところがありますが、そういうところへドライブに行っております。それで最近ではもう行くとこがなくなりましてね、清水へ行くとか富士へ行くとかっていうことを言いますの。
Yeah, so one of the areas where we would go is the Hamanako Lake area in Shizuoka, near to where he grew up. So we like to go for drives there, but recently we've kind of run out of places to go, so we would tend to go to Shimizu or to Fuji, for example. So just little day trips out.
話というはあまりいたしません。もともと寡黙な人間ですので、話というはあまりしないですが、必要なことだけしか言わないんです。だから今日も東京へ行くっていうことは言いましたが、何しに行くってことは申しておりませんの。
Yeah, so he's quite taciturn. He only says really what's needed. He's a man of few words, and I said to him today that I was going to Tokyo, and he didn't even ask, what I was going for.
それですからね、ちょっと年を取ったっていうとおかしいが、私も年寄りですが、岩尾はなお一層年を取りまして、最近は歩かなくなったんですよ。それでうちの階段を4階まではもうくたびれながらも一生懸命上がってきます。それが自分の運動だと思っておるようです。
Yeah, so needless to say, he's becoming, quite long in the tooth, quite advanced in his years, and recently is having trouble walking. And so what he does is our house has 4 stories, and he would try to walk up all 4 flights of stairs, which is very hard for him, but that's what he calls his exercise. So that's about the limit of his activities recently.
それで月に2回お医者さんに来ていただきましてね、もう診察はしていただくようにしております。でちょっと血糖値が高いぐらいで他の病気はあまりないようにでございますが、一応元気でございます。
Yes, and twice a month a doctor comes to our house to give him a checkup. It seems that he has slightly high blood pressure, but no other major ailments or illnesses. So I'd say he's pretty genki. He's pretty full of beans. Sorry, apology. High blood sugar level. Correction.
We have time for 2 more questions. Yes, okay, please. もうどっちでもいい。どうぞ。はい、その次です。We should terminate at 12, so it depends on the length of the.
日本テレビの雨宮です。秀子さんに一つお伺いさせてください。これからも頑張ってまいりますとか、これ今まで結構ポジティブな言葉をたくさんいただいてるんですけれども、一度広告断念となって終わりが見えたと思う中、今回有罪立証という、裁判の長期化が見込まれる中で有罪立証をする方針だと聞いたときに、まずどのような思いになったのか一つ聞かせてください。
Amamiyaさんですか？
はい、雨宮と申します。
So my name is Amamiya from Nippon Television, and we've from Ms. Hakamata, we've had some very positive words that you will continue to fight, and you've obviously put up a great fight, and you must have thought that you could see the end, but then the prosecutor said they would substantiate proof of guilt, and now it's going to become an even more protracted legal case. How was your feeling when you first heard that they were going to carry on trying to substantiate guilt?
私はこれは警察の都合でそういう結果になっていると思っております。立証するって言っても、まあどうぞっていう感じでございます。
Well, I think it's a case. I think it's a case of just the police being the police, and doing what they do, what they like to do. And so I said, if that's what you're going to do, then go ahead and do it.
One more question. Yeah.
NHK の田村です。秀子さんに、ご質問です。先ほど再審法について変えてほしいというお話あったんですけれども、秀子さんが再審法についておかしいと思った点や困った点、棄却が途中であったり決定が取り消されたこともあったと思うので、再審法で失望したことがあれば教えてください。また再審開始決定したので、秀子さんご自身と巌さんと同じような思いをしてほしくないというような思いがあるのかなど、この後再審戦っている方々に対して再審法というものがどうあるべきかというのを、お願いします。
Yeah, so my name's Tamara from NHK. I'd like to ask a question to Hakamata-san. And you mentioned that you'd like to see a change in the law for retrials in Japan. So I'd just like to ask you, what is it that you find so disagreeable about the current retrial law? What is it that caused you to lose hope the most regarding the current legislation in Japan? And what would your message be to other people who are currently fighting for retrials in Japan about how the law should ideally be?
はい、どうぞ。
裁判を進めていくうちでね、なんとなくそんなふうに思ったんです。それで私はなるべく再審開始になったらさっさと再審開始をする裁判とかを進めていただきたいと思っておりました。でそれをまた棄却されたりなんだりしておりましたからね、これはもう一番偉い人に言ってみれば訴えるしかないと思って再審開始法を訴えて、ともかく再審がすぐに開けれるようにしてもらいたいと思ってます。
Yeah, so when I actually heard that they would be, carrying on their efforts to substantiate proof, I did actually have a feeling of I could see this coming. I thought this would happen. If the retrial, but once the retrial was going to go ahead, I think all I could do was to really implore, really beg the person in the highest position of authority to revamp the retrial system.
どうぞ。私も最後の後で。
実際に再審ではですね、袴田巌さんご自身は法廷の方に立たれるご予定なんでしょうか。あるいは少なくとも出廷はされるんでしょうか。
So I just wanted to ask finally with. Yeah, so when it comes to a retrial, will your brother Iwao actually be making an appearance in the court? I'd like to know.
じゃあいいですか、私から我々は今裁判所に対して再審の裁判には巌さんを出頭をもう命じることのないようにということで要請をしています。ただここのところは最後わからないですけれども、最後無罪の判決だけはですね、袴田さんに直接聞かせてあげたいという気持ちはあります。ちょっとそこは最終的にどうするかは分かりませんけれども。はい。
Yeah, so in fact, our defense team is currently petitioning the court that when it comes to the retrial, there will not be the requirement for Mr. Hakamada to actually come and be present in the proceedings. However, for us, it would be the greatest joy to see Mr. Hakamata hearing the verdict of not guilty for himself in the court. And that's the thing that we want to see happen most of all.
じゃあこっちから最後の質問ですけれども、巌さんは最後に無罪になった場合は、今までその裁判とかのことをなるべく言わないと 秀子さんがいたんですけれども、無罪になった場合は、本人は知った方がいいということは、もう小川先生がいたことで分かったんですけれども、もし無罪であることを巌さんは理解した場合は、今のいる妄想の世界から出る可能性がありますか？その期待があるのでしょうか？
So just the final question for me, and I'd just like to ask Mrs. Hakamata this question is, if it is the case that your brother Iwao-san is proven innocent, you said to him that you don't really mention the court case to him, right? But if he is exonerated, and would you like him to understand that? And he understands that he is not guilty, do you think he will be able to come out of his state of delusion?
私もそれを期待しております。もうパッと妄想の世界から抜けてほしいと思っております。
I very much hope so, and I want him to come out of his delusional state as soon as is possible, very much.
はい、もう誰もその期待があると思いますので、はい、最後に、この1年間のこのクラブのメンバーシップを渡したいんですけれども、その前にもう秀子さんはたくさんの女性にとっては多分20世紀と21世紀の日本人の女性ではないかと思います。はい、最後の言葉になります。どうもありがとうございました。1年間のここでいつでも来てください。はい、小川先生もお願いします。終わりです。はい、やったと思うんです。